Good morning. It is Thursday, the 27th of January. Again, following excitingly the story of Abraham and Sarah in Genesis. Today we finished off the chapter 16. In fact, we read from chapter 16, verse 15, through to chapter 17, verse 14. And I have been saying all along that the timing of God is different to our timing. We tend to measure it in a 24-hour day or a 7-day week or a 365-day year or 31-day month. And for us, that's the timetable according to which we work. But God has a very different timetable. And we see that in action in the reading. We are told that Abraham is 86 years of age when he has the son Ishmael, a son by the slave girl Hagar, Hagar being the slave girl of Sarai, as she was still known then. And so he's 86. And it is only at when Abraham's age of 99, so that is 13 years later, that Isaac, the son of Abraham and simultaneously the son of Sarah, is born. It was this son that God intended to be a part of the covenant. And the reasons and the rationale are God's choice, and we accept that in faith. He wanted children from Abraham and Sarah. He wanted it because Sarah and Abraham were elderly and because Sarah was barren. And it had to show that this was a miraculous event. And so the children born of that miraculous event were children born with a distinct mark of God's purpose on their life. Didn't mean they could do anything they wanted because they had this mark of God on them. They had to obey God. So hence throughout, God is giving covenants to Abraham, promises, and saying, if you do the following, then I will do this for you. One of which, of course, the major covenant is many descendants. We understand that to be not only physical, but spiritual descendants. And you and I, as Christians, are part of that by faith, we have come to acknowledge who God is. And so here you have Abraham waiting 13 years before his son is born. And God had been making these promises to him many years before Ishmael, the son born of Hagar, had even come about. So the timetable for God is quite dramatically longer than Abraham and Sarah understood. And the thought occurred to me, and I'll finish on this, why did God wait 13 years after the birth of Ishmael before Isaac? And I thought, well, and I don't know whether I'm theologically correct, but it's kind of makes sense for me, and it supports what I'm trying to teach, that the timetable of God is so different to ours. We know that after Isaac was born, there was quite a lot of tension between Hagar and Sarah and Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael, I think, realized that he would not inherit, and as a 13-year-old, this upset him. He's more than just a teenager. In those days, he would have been quite near to being an adult, but not quite an adult. And so if Isaac had been born at a much earlier age and this tension was going to develop, then Sarah, in a sense, forces Abraham to let Hagar and her son go. And Hagar would have then had an infant that she would have had to care for in the wilderness. And so by God waiting 13 years, perhaps in God's grace, he knew that Ishmael was that much older. And of course, he's not thrown out at exactly 13 years of age. It happens a number of years later. I'm not 100% sure exactly how many years later. But he certainly would have been approaching a full-on adult. Remember, in those days, you became an adult much younger than we have in this day and age. And so Ishmael is an adult when he is thrown out into the wilderness, as it were. He's so much more able to survive and to cope. And who knows what else God is planning in the background, so that when Hagar and Ishmael leave, they are not attacked or killed by perhaps a foreign tribe that was there and would have found them. And God knew that. And so he waited so that the timing was perfect. And what else was God preparing in the background as he knew Isaac would be born and then Isaac would grow? All of these things God takes into account. Remember, we tend to think only in a 24-hour day or 7-day week or 30-day month. God thinks into centuries ahead and gets things prepared. So we must have faith. Abraham had to have that faith 13 years after Ishmael's birth before he actually gets to receive the promise God had been giving him. 13 years, that seems a very, very long time. Have faith. God is in control. God will bring about everything that he has promised, even if you have to wait. And yeah, I think 13 years is quite the extreme. It's not going to happen for everything God promises you, but have faith. God's word always comes true. Folks, we'll chat again tomorrow. God bless.